camera, and then we'll talk afterwards. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am back for another live stream. I promise this time I will not be as awkward as I was last time because I have a little bit more of a sense of how to actually work this thing. Except let me turn off my do not disturbs really quick. I think I'm back. I'm back. I'm good. Okay, I'm back. So now I won't be disturbed by anything that comes up on my phone, and I am good to go. Hi. Let me know if my mic is working because I can't test it. If everything sounds good, you can give me a thumbs up in the comments and I will get started because I have been so excited to talk about this one topic for weeks now because as I was going through my coaching certification program and developing my own, it's a little laggy. I don't really know how to fix it. You're going to go downstairs? Okay, I love you. I don't really know how to fix it, so we're going to do the best that we can. Should I just turn the microphone off, do you think? Or just keep going? Okay, go downstairs. We're just going to keep going. If you think that it's weird, just tell me to turn it off and I'll try to turn it off. I'll turn it off. It's fixed. Okay, great. So, Daddy's putting Stella to sleep, baby. So, this is something that I kind of realized as I was putting together my own program. And this is one of the most, if not the most important thing when it comes to manifesting and trying to change your life through this lens. The most important piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of people aren't following through with is the action part. It's the action part of manifestation. And there's a few reasons for that that I think that I've sort of come up with. And I think if any of these resonate with you, let me know. But first off, I think if people aren't sort of educating themselves, being immersed in this whole world of manifestation, law of attraction, I think the general idea, if you're not doing the research, is like that manifestation is all about thinking your way into getting what you want, right? Like the idea that just your thoughts alone can and will change the universe to bring you whatever it is that you're desiring. And so much of that is true. However, it isn't just the thoughts alone. The thoughts are a huge component. The inner work is a necessity. You have to do it. You have to get yourself into the vibration that matches what it is you're trying to bring into your life. And there's you could literally do a whole podcast episode just on that importance. But a lot of people don't understand that there's that third piece of the equation. Well, the last piece of the equation is that after you do the inner work, or at the same time as you're doing the inner work, there has to be some form of action. You can't just sit on your couch day in and day out and think internally, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a millionaire. And then wake up one morning not having done anything other than just sitting on the couch thinking this to yourself. And all of a sudden there's $1 million in your bank account. Like that's just not how it works. So there is that action component that I think a lot of people just don't, because you don't hear about it so much, right? Like you hear the slogans, whatever they may be, the law of attraction, where whatever you think is what you will achieve. And there's not so much like those words of action put into what I think the mainstream understanding of manifestation is. So that's one part. And if you're not actively learning, that may be something that a lot of people just aren't realizing. Um, so two, I think, and I realize this especially for myself and for the women who have seemed to resonate the most with um, what I have been putting out there, women just like me, really busy, overwhelmed moms who just feel like they're pulled in so many different directions as is, and the idea of taking an additional action on top of the actions they're already taking day in and day out, just in and of itself feels completely overwhelming. And that kind of shuts down the manifestation process, period. Like, and I say this from a place of empathy because that's literally where I was for so many years, where I was just, I felt like my life didn't belong to me. The minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed, like my life was owned by my family, right? Or that's kind of how it felt. Like I belonged to other people. I didn't belong to me. And the idea of even adding something into my existence that required any additional activity, just it was like, nah, I want more out of life, but I can't do it. I can't do it. Like I can barely, and this is not me speaking now, but me speaking for, I don't know, a few years. Like it would be amazing if I remembered to brush my teeth in the morning. Like full transparency. Like, yes, that was me. And so the idea of inner work and then outer work, external work, doing anything additional, just it killed the deal for me. Um, so I think that is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially like I said, people like myself who are in this position of young kids, full-time job, just all of the reasons, right? Um, the third thing that I think is really hindering that action piece of the puzzle is that I think, all right, let's say somebody understands that action is part of it and they're willing. They're like, yeah, no, I'm game. I'm going to take action. What action do I take? What is it? Because like if I kind of knew what action I should be taking, then I wouldn't be in this position, right? Where I'm like trying to manifest because I would already know what to do and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's the third piece where you understand that there's an action component, but you don't know what that action entails, what it should be, right? What it should be. Um, and for me, I think that was also where I was right at the very beginning of when I started in this manifestation process. And I'm going to talk about that um, as I continue. But I think those are the three things that I really want to address today is these these hurdles, these perceived obstacles that when you kind of go a little bit deeper into them, you realize they're not obstacles. They're actually really, really, I don't want to say easy because I don't want anybody to think that I'm diminishing um, their personal struggles or their personal feelings about their difficulties, right? Um, but I think that there's a lot of reframing that can that can open up this process for a lot more people and make it more accessible than they realize. So I'm going to start with the the not understanding that the action is part of it, and that comes down to when you decide to make the decision that you want to change your life and you are willing to open yourself up to this work, you do have to do a little bit of a dive. Now, for me, I did a deep dive, but even a little bit of a dive is better than nothing. So, for me, one of the first things that I did, instead of doing extra in the beginning, when I realized, like when my journey officially started, and I knew, okay, I have my reason. I know I want to change my life. I've talked about it before. It all starts with this idea of being able to have financial freedom, to be able to send my kid to the very best schools and the very best in the world, right? So that's kind of where it all started from. So the first thing that I did, it was such a subtle action that helped with this whole educational thing. And that was sort of choosing different focus. So, whatever free time that I did have, so that would be, for example, um, in the car, I drive to work, obviously, and some of my jobs, some of the offices that I go to are far. So, I had a lot of time in the car. In the past, I would listen to either the news or I would listen to like health podcasts, wellness podcasts. So instead of listening to those two things, I actively began searching out manifestation podcasts. Like, let me learn a little bit more about this process. Like, what does this actually entail? Um, it brings it from the kind of like woo woo side where, oh, think your way into existence or think things into existence to actually like giving things um, like physical, scientific, it gives the the blueprint for how it actually works, right? So it's not just this what's happening, I can't see it. Like, no, it actually spells it out for you in ways that are easier to understand. So I started with that. Um, I'm a diehard bath fan. Like, I will not give up my baths for anything. So every night I've always taken a bath like before bed. And normally what I have been reading in the past, I'm a big reader. I read in the bath, so it's like a twofold thing. Um, I would read like murder mysteries, psychological thrillers, like all that stuff. I love it. However, in this journey, I decided to change it up. So instead of reading those in the bath, I decided to have books about mindset and mindfulness. So then, I was reading more like Napoleon Hill or Jack Canfield or Brian Tracy, like books that were going to educate me and get me in this mindset, get me to understand what is this whole thing? What is this whole process? So those were tiny, tiny, and they almost like weren't actions, right? Because I was already doing these things. I was already reading. I was already listening to things in my car. I just switched the focus. So tiny, tiny little actions. But they had a huge, huge role in my transformation. So that was the first way that I started to better myself in the education realm. The second um, is where I brought up the idea of kind of taking an additional action on top of a life that feels very overwhelmed to begin with, right? So I'll just talk about me again specifically because that's obviously I can only talk about my own experience. Duh. So we'll say like late 30 something, mom of two young kids with a full time job, with a partner. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's so sweet. Um, with a partner, with, responsibilities, with laundry, house, 15,000 loads of laundry. Like, let's just be honest, so much freaking laundry. Okay. So, yes, again, the idea of doing more felt very overwhelming to me. But I was so motivated. The reason why I was so motivated is because I really had honed in on my why, right? So I got to the point in my life where I had what I considered my enough is enough moment. And it's funny because my enough is enough moment had it was not the worst part of it was not like rock bottom. My enough was enough moment actually happened at the very best part of my life. Like up until now, up until that moment, I was in the very best stage of my life. Everything was amazing. Um, and it was like fine. It was great. But it wasn't until I had the moment where I was faced with, okay, for the very first time, I'm faced with a financial situation where I can't give my son what I feel is the very best opportunity in this in life. Like, I felt restricted for the very first time. It was purely in this stage of finances. And, you know, it was like, I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like that feeling one bit. And because it affected my son, it hit in a different way. I was like, you know what? I'm making a change. I'm going to make a change. And like, again, we're fine. Like, we're fine financially, fine. But I wanted more. It was my moment. I was like, I want more and I'm going to get more. And I was so absolutely determined. And in my head, I had a deadline. I had X amount of days before I had to tell this school we're coming or we're not coming. And I made the decision. I'm like, he's going to go to this school and I'm going to do whatever it takes. And so that was my why. I had solidified my why. And that was the difference when it came to, okay, I am willing to add on, I am willing to take on an additional action to get what I need to get to satisfy my why. So, what I did, and it was, again, well, this was sort of a bigger action. I'm not going to minimize this because this is a big thing. So, for me, there are X amount of hours in the day. When I wake up, usually it's like right when my kids wake up. So I'm from that moment, just whatever they need, I'm there. It's not me time, right? It's family time. And then it's taking my son to school. And then it's my job. And then when I get home from my job, it's family again up until bedtime. And then it's sleep because Lord knows we need all the sleep. So I said, what can I do? Where can I fit in additional work? And for me, that was the decision to get up early. And that I did. However, I know that it felt initially, I was almost like, oh, how am I going to do this? But when I had, so what made it easier for me was that I ended up ordering a workbook from Catherine Zankina, who was one of the people that I was listening to, Manifestation Babe, on her podcast. I ordered her workbook and it came, and I was so excited to get started that waking up early the next morning, it felt like Christmas morning. That's how it felt. So it was not like a burden to wake up early. It was actually, I was so excited. I was like, I can't wait to get started. And that one morning rolled into the next morning and the next morning, and I established a routine for myself. And so now, like, I literally, now that I actually have this business and I have this brand and I have so many projects that I'm like working on. I have this coaching package that I'm about to launch very, very soon. Like, I'm so excited about. Every morning is like Christmas morning. It is wild because I'm literally like, I'm so excited to just wake up, make a coffee, have alone time, allow my brain to like thrive. And it's almost like there is no too early. If I naturally wake up at 4, I know I'm not going to bed for, another hour or so. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to get started because that's an extra, now I get an extra 3 hours before the rest of the house wakes up. That's so much that I can accomplish. So, yeah, at first, I guess it feels a little daunting to make the decision. Okay, yeah, I'm going to take away an hour of sleep in order to work on myself. But and just speaking from my own personal experience, like that was the very best thing that I could have done for myself. So the third thing that I want to just talk about briefly, which, knowing me, it's not going to be briefly, but I am going to try. Okay, I promise. When you understand that you are getting inspired ideas or inspiration, if things come to you, and they hit you in a different way, like, and sort of understanding your intuition, this is sort of the part where I talked about, not knowing what action to take. So, like, for me, the two actions that I previously described, those were things that in my head, like, I could understand. Okay, I'm going to take these actions. I didn't know at the time how those were going to lead to anything. Like, to me, getting this certain amount of money so my kid could go to school. Um, I remember at this time, like, I didn't have a business. I didn't have a brand. I wasn't a business owner. I had no idea where I was going to be in X amount of months or years. So this was not in the cards. Like, it was not part of my thought process. I was just taking action to initially do the work on myself. So I would say, and this happened so quickly, you guys, I would say it was maybe like 2 or 3 days, maybe after getting that workbook that I started doing this. And so, like I mentioned, I drive a lot. I was in the car and I had just finished listening to a podcast episode, and I had been listening to so much podcasts on that day. I had like a total of 3 hours that I was in the car on the way to work and then on the way back. And like the last 20 minutes of the ride, as soon as this podcast episode ended, I had to turn it off completely. I just needed my brain to like decompress. I knew I had just like loaded it, and I was like, all right, I need to kind of breathe. And so I was driving in silence, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I hear in my head, Betterment Babe. And I'm like, oh, Betterment Babe, that's kind of cute. That's catchy. What is that? Did I see that on Instagram earlier? Like, what is? And I actually looked it up. And I was like, no, there's no Betterment Babe. And then it kept like, I couldn't let it go. I was like, Betterment Babe. I looked up the domain name, just more so out of curiosity than anything. It was available. And I was like, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it because there's a reason. I had absolutely, again, I want to emphasize, I had no plan for this. But this Betterment Babe came into my head. The domain name was available, and I just took it. I just took it without really understanding what I was doing. And then I got home, and I looked on Instagram. The Instagram name was available, and I was like, hey, well, I guess I'm going to take that too. And then I kept getting further into it. The email address was available, and I was like, you know what? There's something. There's just like something. I knew something was happening. And I think a day later, I kind of was like, this is possibly could be a business. And so we're just going to roll with it. And I ended up doing all of the business registration paperwork, the LLC documents, the EIN registration, like the whole thing. And things just kept kind of like falling into place. And it was crazy because, again, this was not part of any plan that I had, but things were just being put in my way. And the only thing that I was doing was capturing them. So this idea came into my head, which I call an inspired idea. And when I say idea, I just mean Betterment Babe. Came into my head from Lord knows where. I captured it. And then as the ideas kept coming to me, like website, you know, Instagram, social media, I just started doing them. And it took on a mind of its own. And the inspired ideas led to the actions that I was meant to take. And I just kind of let the universe guide me. And I know that sounds a little bit woo woo, but it's literally not. Once you do the education, once you educate yourself, once you hear people like me tell their stories, you know, because I've heard so many other people tell their stories, and it's so similar. It is like being guided once you open yourself up. And one of, you know, the things that I say to myself all the time in terms of like affirmations is like, I am open and ready to receive. That is what I say. That is my go-to affirmation. I say it before bed. I say it when I wake up. I say it throughout the day, not all the time, just like throughout the day. At yoga, when you set your intention, you know, when you're doing your shavasana, like I am open and ready to receive because I don't have all the answers. I am learning a lot of really cool things that are, I know, going to be helpful to people, especially people like me. But I don't know the answers. The universe does, and the universe is going to guide us, and the universe is going to tell us and show us the best actions to take as long as we are open and ready to receive those ideas. So the idea of kind of taking those little steps in the right direction before you ultimately know where you're going um, is actually kind of fun. It's exciting. It's like every day you don't really know what's going to come your way, but you're kind of ready for whatever. So that's basically what I wanted to share today. Um, I hope that this has been helpful to you. I know that this is going to be something that is going to be a really big part of my coaching program, because it's life changing, and it's so much easier than the initial daunting feeling that I think a lot of people think. So thank you for joining me. If you want to talk any bit more about this, like as you can tell, I literally can't stop talking about it. So feel free to DM me. I would love to share more, or if you have any like specific questions, I'm here for them. And I have a lot of cool things that I'm going to be talking about this week, and really exciting announcements. And I just can't wait to share everything with you guys. So thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And I will see you soon.